Sally in the UK has just asked a question to me. Has there been any sightings of the Styx lioness with the one surviving cub? And that is also with Asif, who's asked anything happening between the Matimbas and the Birminghams. What happened last night? We were expecting there to be fireworks last night. Now, Sally, firstly, I want to say that I haven't heard anything from my colleagues. I'll be honest that I haven't really asked. In the melee that's been these guys coming onto the property, it's been one of those questions that for some reason or another has just slipped my mind. So I actually can't answer that question. I will, however, try my best to try and get the answer tonight when I get home. And definitely try and give you an update on what's happening there. As for what happened last night between the Matimbas and the Birminghams, I probably think that the Matimbas either fled to regroup and come back into their area, or they had a little bit of a scrap last night. I can't really say that these lions look like they've been in a fight. These males look remarkably clean for having even fought against two male lions like the Matimbas. These are young male lions, don't forget. This is the first time that they're trying to do a pride takeover. And the Matimbas are experienced lions. They're also bigger lions than this. And no matter what the encounter is going to be between the two of them, I think that they're going to be bloodshed on both sides. And I don't see any evidence of that. I don't see any bite marks or fresh scratch marks on them at all. So I think that it's probably fair to say that they managed to avoid one another last night, including the Styx lionesses. There's been no updates on the radio today at all. And because we're running late and it's a bit atypical to how we normally do our show, for those of you wondering if during this whole test you can still ask questions and send through your comments, you are absolutely welcome to. While we're doing all of this, you're welcome to carry on using the hash or the Twitter handle hashtag Safari Live, or email through your questions to questions@WildEarthTV. And we'll see what we can get through during these tests, absolutely. You can see the dry nature of the grass there against this lions. For literally only 2 weeks ago, the grass was the same color as these lions. And now you can see it's taking on that grey cast. And they're starting to stick out again. So considering that we've just really seen elephant and lion today, Asif has actually asked us quite an interesting question. Knowing that some lions in some areas of Africa actually do hunt elephant as a priority during the dry season like they do in the Chobe, do we know of any lions in the Sabi Sands that hunt elephant? And Asif, I have to say, no, I don't know of any lion prides who would specialize in elephant hunting in the Sabi Sands at this moment. But it's absolutely not uncommon for coalitions of males like this to take on elephant. Generally it would be young elephant or a really injured elephant. I do know that the Mapogos were quite well known for taking on prey much larger than themselves. They killed a number of hippo and even an elephant, as far as I know. But absolutely, they would generally take on this if it was the only thing that presented itself. And lions being opportunistic, you don't quite know what sparks a frenzy, but they can get themselves worked up and take on something as big as an elephant. Generally, the tactic with elephant hunting, from what I've seen with my own eyes, is exactly the same as it would be for buffalo hunting. It would be staying away from the dangerous end, which is the front of the elephant, and anchoring the elephant down with sheer weight on the back legs, trying to trip the animal over. And then from there, it's quite a tragic series of events. Because elephants can't really be suffocated, it's literally just through shock and through blood loss that the elephant finally dies. It's absolutely not a nice thing to see. Even I have turned away and turned down at that. It's one of those really emotional kills. But that's exactly what would happen. I mean, it's out here, it is real, it is what we see, it is supposed to happen, it's what they do. So it's just a personal preference, really, if you're going to be watching it or not. But yeah, I haven't seen it with my own eyes in the Sabi Sands, and I haven't heard of it happen for quite some time as well. But definitely possible, a feasible idea. We're starting to hear a few of the nocturnal birds coming out at the moment. That was a thickney that you heard screeching as I started to start my story. Funnily enough, got a turtle dove calling as well. Other than that, the little owls that we usually hear, I haven't heard them now. And the bush isn't singing just yet with those insects that is very typical of a summer evening out at this time of the evening. Very quiet, very peaceful. What's the time there, Mr. Andrew?
11 past 6.
Oh, I've missed my my bet, so lost that one. For those of you just joining us now by surprise, is that I bet Andrew that these lines will get moving today at 10 past 6, and we are 1 minute past that time at the moment on Andrew's watch. Now let's see how far off I am to that particular estimate when they finally do get moving tonight. I suppose it's a good thing that they're not moving. The area that we're in at the moment, we drove through following Karula, a female leopard, this morning, and it is incredibly thick. It's a very dense piece of bush, this, at the moment. Excuse me. And I think to stick with them at night, where we can't really see where we're going, would be a big challenge in this area. In other areas, it's quite easy to follow lion at night time, especially 5 big males like this. What's quite interesting about the territory that they are lying up in the moment is that the Matimba coalition, the coalition that they're having a bit of a boundary dispute with at the moment, and who they are having a fight over dominance over a couple of the prides in the area that the Matimbas have control over, is pretty much uninhabited by lion, to be quite honest. From what we can understand, the Matimbas have the core of their territory on the south of where we are at the moment, and the Majigalan males have their core territory also away from Djuma and this portion of Torchwood, or close to where we are at Torchwood and Buffelshoek, which are adjacent properties to where we are at the moment, and are lying in a bit of an area that is, for all intents purposes, unoccupied, because the Matimbas have been uncontested in this particular area for quite some time. And their home range around their core territory will definitely shrink with these males sticking around. And I'm hoping that they actually make Djuma their core territory, which would be fantastic. It means that at least for the next year or two, we will get to see these males quite often. And core territories are relatively small, home ranges are relatively big. In the Sabi Sands, home ranges are roughly 5,000 hectare. And the size of the core territories is probably about 1/20th of that. And by core territory, I mean an area where the females will most likely go and have their cubs, and it will be the area that the pride, including the males, will often fight to the death to protect. It's their castle. Whereas a home range has some overlap from prides all around the area. And on the theme of lions, what they can and they cannot take down, Colin, who's 15, has and from Johannesburg, hello Colin, has asked, can lion prides or lion coalitions take down rhino? Absolutely, Colin, they can absolutely take down rhino. Obviously, rhino are like these big battle tanks with a big horn on the front, and are going to be difficult to take down. Absolutely, but it's not unfeasible to think that they wouldn't be able to take one down. I haven't seen rhino being killed by a lion just yet. I've seen elephant kill rhino, and I've seen rhino kill buffalo, but I've never seen lion kill a rhino, or a rhino kill a lion, for that matter of fact. They seem to coexist quite happily with one another. Here you can see evidence that they are still enjoying their nap, not a care in the world. Obviously not hungry enough to wake up. And go and hunt just yet. And also obviously not worried enough about their territory to get up and start roaring. Big stretch. Giving himself a hug. That's quite typical of lion, that curled front paws. Have a look at that. And flopping over. Only thing he needs to do is have his tongue hanging out of his mouth. It is getting a little bit cooler. This time of the year, as the sun goes down, there's almost a perceptible drop in temperature. And from when we came out 3 hours ago, where it was 27 or 28 degrees centigrade, it's now 17 degrees centigrade. And we can fully expect it to drop another 10 degrees centigrade or so, down to about 10 to 12 degrees centigrade by tomorrow morning. Generally, we see here a rough 20 centigrade difference between daytime and nighttime temperatures, winter and summer. So in winter, it's not uncommon for it to go down to freezing. Here during July, beginning of August, you won't do that for very often, maybe a week or two. Whereas the most of the temperatures in winter here average around about 5 to about 8 degrees as a minimum temperature, with a maximum temperature anywhere from about 17 to 25 degrees in winter. And in summertime, we increase that to a minimum of around about 17 to 25 degrees minimum, and sometimes up to 50 degrees centigrade as a maximum temperature, with an average of probably around about 35 to 40 degrees centigrade. So very, very hot here in summertime. Humidity probably around about 60 to 70%, with an odd day here in January, February, where it might peak at about 80-90%. But because we don't live right on the coast, we're about 80 kilometers from the coastline, No, probably a bit more, but 160 kilometers from the coastline. We do get a lot of moisture coming in from the sea. We definitely can smell it and sometimes feel it, and a lot of our weather systems come in over the sea. But we don't get that sort of coastline humidity, mugginess. But it's still a relatively high humidity. We're looking at around about 60-70% maximum. As an average, of course. Are they slowly starting to fidget, roll over? They've been doing this the whole afternoon, to be honest. They have been rolling around, moving. One of them has been up, licking themselves. There's always been some action going on the whole afternoon. And with us being on air outside of normal times, I suppose we've elicited a couple of new viewers this way as well. And Beth, who is a first-time viewer, has asked quite an interesting question. Do we find wolves out here, and would we follow them at night time? Now, Beth, there are two wolves in Africa, the Ethiopian wolf and the wild dog, also known as the painted wolf. In Africa, they're not shaggy like you find in your northern hemisphere wolves, and they also don't look exactly the same. If I were to describe what the Ethiopian wolf looks like or what the painted wolf looks like, it would be a coyote or a jackal that's just a bit bigger, and not a wolf that's a bit smaller. And we don't follow them at night time. The Ethiopian wolf is highly endangered, as is the painted wolf. And they are mainly diurnal, which means that they're mainly active during the daytime hours, and at nighttime they are resting. And we have a policy out here that we don't look at animals that are not nocturnal at night. We don't use our spotlights and our lights on them. It does disturb them to a degree, and is atypical. We look at them in the day because they're active in the day, whereas nighttime animals we look at the night because they're active at nighttime. However, and this obviously brings up the question, why do we look at lions and why do we look at leopard during the day when they are obviously sleeping and resting up during the day? And that's because we've found that we don't really disturb these animals during the day. The most disturbance comes from the spotlights or the use of lights at nighttime. And so we've experienced the most, I suppose, change of behavior when we use spotlights on animals that are active during the day at night, and that's why we don't do it. Whereas we don't see that at all with lion and leopard. We can look at them during the day with virtually no change in their behavior. And since we are looking at flat cats, as the saying goes, why not answer a question about myself personally? And Regina has asked me what African countries have I visited. Regina, I was born in South Africa. I'm a South African. I've toured South Africa quite extensively. I've also toured through Namibia. I've toured through Botswana. I've toured through Mozambique. I've toured through Zambia. I've toured through Tanzania. I've toured through Kenya as well. I've also visited the United States, and I have toured coast to coast, visiting New York City, which I thought was fascinating. I have visited Denver, Las Vegas, San Diego, and LA, and a couple of places in between. I've also been to Australia, to the east coast of Australia, where I spent some time in Sydney and in, I can't even remember the town. in north of Sydney, about a 2-hour flight north of Sydney. I can't remember what it is right now. My mind has gone blank. And I visited the UK, where I toured through Dover and London. So not so many Northern Hemisphere countries. Definitely at the moment, the favorite countries that I enjoy visiting are in Africa. I am a tour nut. I enjoy strapping my tent to my back and going into the wildest places that I can possibly drive into and spending time there on my time off. And I've spent a considerable amount of time, weeks on end, touring through Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique and Zambia. And Tanzania, in actual fact. Visiting the game parks and their towns, touring the wild places left on this world. When we found these lions this morning, we found them after Jamie having heard them roaring last night. I didn't hear them roaring at all, but Jamie had it surfaced at a time she heard them roaring quite far away, and when I asked Jamie how far, she said it was very far. It was way over our boundary. Now we've just been asked, how far away can we hear a lion roar? And depending on the book that you read, it'll tell you anywhere from 4 to 8 kilometers on a very still night. I've experienced lions roaring probably from about 4 to 5 kilometers away. That would be in this particular area in the Sabi Sands, and where I've worked in other places in the Kruger National Park. So in the topography of the Kruger National Park and the Sabi Sands, sound carries for about 4 to 5 kilometers that my ears can hear them at. I suppose in a more open area on a still night with the wind blowing in your favor, you could possibly hear them 8 to 10 kilometers away. However, you'd probably have to have a 20-year-old's ears for that, and have the wind blowing from them to you in a very flat landscape on a very still night for that to happen. Would be my guess, but definitely feasible. I'm not discounting that at all, or the information in the books at all. But in this particular area, 4 to 6 kilometers, I'd say, would be about the average. To test tonight has come out of the box with some gremlins on it, and we will not unfortunately be able to test that camera tonight, but definitely keep watching the show. We definitely will be testing out that camera, and you definitely will be invited to partake in having some of these extraordinary behind the scenes moments with us. Just not tonight, although you did get treated to, I don't know how many parts, but extra 20 minutes of safari tonight with these sleeping cats. Unfortunately, they are still unconscious. It would have been lovely to see them stand up, but it does give us something to come back to tomorrow and something to look forward to tomorrow. So from myself and from Andrew and from Jamie and from VM, and I know from Jess and Tara in Final Control, we'd like to say thank you very, very much for viewing the show tonight. Thank you for all your interactivity, and thank you for supporting the product, and we will see you again tomorrow for the Sunrise Safari. So from me, goodbye.